if you've not got a cup of tea, highly recommend you get one. Personally, I like a cup of tea or coffee or something similar whilst I talk about depressing things. I think the warmth of it helps. I want to talk about Sudan. I'm from Sudan, a country in northeast Africa. Generally speaking, when people ask me, would you say north or east? I say east. North Africa feels distinctly Arab to me. There will be people inevitably fighting about whether or not you should consider North Sudan a Arab or African country. I think the debate is redundant for several reasons, but that's not the purpose of this video. I think I just want to talk more about the kind of desperation and sadness I feel about just how invisible we are to the international community at large. So yeah, starting there. So I'm living in the UK. I've lived in the UK most of my life, minus a stint in Saudi Arabia. And I'm currently studying at university here. And there's a very active political culture, I would say, at universities in the UK. And honestly, universities around the world. That's probably why they're always the first to go and the first to be targeted whenever people want progress, whenever people want change. But in light of my sort of situation, I've been forced to reflect on Sudan's sort of meaning to people here, to young people especially, to people who attend universities, to people who are, generally speaking, quite politically active, quite caring people, people with similar political agendas, and just wondering, you know, why hasn't Sudan captured the imagination and the empathy of people the way that other peoples around the world who have also been suffering has, especially given the scale of the conflict in Sudan and also the crisis, the famine crisis that it's currently facing. There are projections that the famine will be as bad as the Great Chinese Famine in the late 50s, early 60s, which, as we know, is one of the worst famines in history. So I've just been doing a bit of reading and thinking about it, and these are essentially my theories, and I doubt any of them is particularly original, but I think I just wanted to sort of get it all off my chest all at once. My first thought was just along the lines of explaining the origins of the conflict in Sudan. Now, I'm not going to insult people's intelligence. I don't think it's too difficult for people to get their heads around, but I do think that it's the usual learning names, learning faces, and I think unless you're already familiar with the region, which is unlikely, even Sudanese people as a group will not be able to give you a definitive consensus on who is responsible for the suffering that is currently occurring, which makes it quite unique from, say, the situation in Palestine. And again, this is not necessarily an informative video, although I would highly recommend that if you don't know about what's going on, you do some research. But I definitely think that the fact that we as Sudanese people don't have a collective few lines, you know, a message, a definitive message of what's going on, hasn't really helped us advocate for ourselves. Although I'll be curious to hear what other people think, if anyone ever watches this. I think the other thing is the impact of the media. There's not good Wi-Fi access in good parts of Sudan in comparison to in Gaza, although that's not great. And also the media that does leave Sudan is very strictly controlled, reviewed. You know, you can barely talk to your families on the phone about what's really been happening, let alone get out clips of the impact on people's lives at the hands of the RSF. So, you know, people can send reports word of mouth, but that only has so much impact compared to, unfortunately, rather graphic and detailed journalism. Definitely there aren't as many strong journalists based within the country of Sudan as there are Sudanese journalists from the diaspora who are not spending the majority of their time there. And of course, this is no, judgment or castigation on my part. It's not like I'm there either, reporting either. I think also, especially when I was trying to ask myself, like, what is it about young people's, I guess, lack of discussion? Realistically, what is Africa's importance to people, economically, socially, culturally, emotionally? What importance do we have to those of us who are not of us? And the definition of us can be so narrow sometimes, even within Sudan. So what hope do we really have of, as a nation, being important to the emotions of people here or people anywhere else in the world? I know that, for example, in Palestine, the suffering there has become symbolic of Islamophobia and suffering of Muslims around the world. We see it as our cause as much as it is their cause, and even without the support of a single other community, the voices of the Muslim community in their billions is powerful and important, and the kind of advocacy we could only ever dream of having. And I think part of that is linked, and this is not a diss at Muslims specifically, I think this is everyone. I think part of that is just that at the end of the day, people expect chaos and they expect suffering of Africans, from Africans, by Africans. What's another starving black child? It's very hard to move in this world knowing just how little you mean to everyone. I'm so blessed, so privileged that fact doesn't make me suffer. But I cannot pretend it's not a fact anymore. And that's all really. That's my little reflection. I have placement tomorrow because I am a medical student here. So I will carry this with me into work as usual, like I have done for the last 500 and so days, and like I will do for the foreseeable future. So if you want to see more of my life, but I can't imagine why, subscribe. And if you weren't already, please keep Sudan in your prayers and in your search history.